Good morning, wonderful AP Human Geography students. Welcome to Unit 2 on Culture. The word culture generally refers to a specific group's particular way of life. Culture includes the social meanings of various aspects of life, such as race, ethnicity, values, languages, religions, and clothing styles. Though many distinct cultures are prevalent around the world today, those that are the most dominant have origins in one of a few areas called culture hearths. These seven culture hearths are the heartlands of various cultures, and historically, these seven main locations are the areas from which the most dominant cultural ideas have spread. The seven original culture hearths are the Niles River Valley, Egypt; the Indus River Valley in Pakistan; the Wang Valley in China; the Ganges River Valley in India; Mesopotamia, the region we often refer to as the Mideast; Mesoamerica, Mexico and the Central American region; and West Africa. These regions are considered culture hearths because such key cultural practices as religion, the use of iron tools and weapons, highly organized social structures, and the development of agriculture started and spread from these regions. In terms of religion, for example, the area around Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula is considered the culture hearth for the Islamic religion, and the area from which Muslims initially traveled to convert people to Islam. The spread of tools, social structures, and agriculture spread in a similar manner from each of the culture hearths. Also important to the development of early culture centers are culture regions. These are areas that contain dominant cultural elements. Though not everyone in the culture region has the same cultural traits, they are often influenced by the center's traits in some way. Within this system, there are four components of influence. I have a little diagram to show you. The core is the center, the heart of the area that shows the most strongly expressed culture traits. The core is usually the most heavily populated, and in the case of religion, features the most famous religious landmarks: the mosque, the cathedral, the main religious structure, perhaps a temple. The domain is the area surrounding the core. Although it has its own cultural values, it's still strongly influenced by the core. And the sphere surrounds the domain. The sphere is also influenced by that religious or that cultural element. The outlier is all the area outside of the sphere, surrounding the sphere. Now in this diagram, if you look over to the other picture, I have a drawing of the sort of the area, the region around Utah where the Mormon religion began. You can see the core is the area. You can find the Great Salt Lake. It's sort of a little bluish area, and around that area is the core of the Mormon religion where it began. The lighter orange is the domain from which the religion spread, and then the sphere, and then we could see an outlier area which is depicted more in sort of a yellow, and you can see even out little spots even up into Canada where the Mormons began their settlements as well. So cultural diffusion is the term used to describe the spread of cultural ideas from the core, and in the case of cultural regions, and the spread from the culture hearth. And there are three methods of cultural diffusion. The first is called direct diffusion, and it occurs when two cultures are very close together. Over time, direct contact between the two leads to an intermingling of the cultures. Historically, this occurs because of trade, intermarriage, or even sometimes warfare, because members of the various cultures interacted with each other over long periods of time. An example today could also be the similar interest in soccer in some areas of the United States and Mexico. Now, forced diffusion or expansion diffusion is the second way of cultural diffusion, and it takes place when one culture defeats another and forces its beliefs and customs onto the conquered people. An example of this would be when the Spanish took over lands in the Americas and later forced the original inhabitants to convert to Roman Catholicism in the 16th and 17th centuries. Now, the term ethnocentrism is often related to forced diffusion. Ethnocentrism refers to the idea of looking at the world only from one's own culture vantage point. As a result, people participating in this form of diffusion often believe their cultural beliefs are superior to those of other groups, and in turn force their ideas upon those they conquer. That's ethnocentrism. In addition, cultural imperialism is usually put into the category of forced diffusion, as it is the practice of actively promoting cultural characteristics such as language, food, religion, etc., of one nation to another. Cultural imperialism normally occurs within forced diffusion because it frequently happens through military force, takeovers, or economic force. The final form of cultural diffusion is indirect diffusion. This type of diffusion just happens when cultural ideas are spread through a middleman or even another culture. An example here would be the popularity of Italian food throughout North America. Technology, mass media, and the internet are all playing a huge role in promoting indirect diffusion around the world today. Because culture hearths develop over time, new dominant areas of dominant culture have done so as well. Today's modern culture hearths such are places such as the United States, Tokyo, and London. Areas such as these are considered modern culture hearths because of the prevalence of their cultural aspects now present throughout much of the world today. Examples of this modern cultural diffusion include the popularity of sushi in Los Angeles, California, and Vancouver, British Columbia, and the presence of Starbucks in places like France, Germany, Moscow, even in China's Forbidden City. Direct diffusion has certainly played a role in this new spread of cultural values and products, and people are now moving around frequently because of today's ease of travel. Physical barriers such as mountain ranges and oceans and deserts no longer hinder people's movement, and there is a resultant spread of cultural ideas. It is indirect diffusion, though, which has had the largest impact on the spread of ideas from places like the United States to the rest of the world. The internet and advertising through the many forms of mass media have allowed people worldwide to see what is popular in the US. As a result, blue jeans, Coca-Cola products can be found even in remote Himalayan villages. In whatever ways cultural diffusion occurs, now or in the future, it has happened many times throughout history and will continue to do so as new areas grow in power and pass on their cultural traits to the world. The ease of travel and modern technology will only aid in spreading up and speeding up the process of modern cultural diffusion. Stay tuned for another short lecture on diffusion. Thank you for your attention.